Okay, this is Harriet Williams, who's going to tell lots of interesting things about it, her life at Higgins Lake.
Hopefully. Well, Mother came up as a 12-year-old girl with her mother, my grandmother, and uncle, her brother. Aunt Lydia was 5 years older, so she was in the city, remained in Chicago working. They came up through, grandmother answered an ad, or ads. Ads were run in the Chicago paper, full-page ads on property here in northern Michigan. And she answered about the property sight unseen, as far as I know, about 25 acres. And they were brought out here by horse and wagon, of course. They landed in Roscommon. However, some of the summers they came up here, they came to Mickelson, which is now underwater, and came across. Cottage Grove people got off the train at Perchini, which is on the other side of us. They bought the property, but there was nothing, no building on it, and they pitched a camp down where Barry's Boatyard is. Barry's? Yeah, Barry's Boatyard. I think it's Barry's, isn't it? At the lake, and lived in a tent that summer while the Carrick brothers built the house, which is still over there across the lake, south end of the lake. She stayed here. Her whether her grandfather came with them that summer or not, I don't know. I don't remember. But the year she was 15, she stayed and went to what we call the Hyslop School, which was a schoolhouse, one-room schoolhouse on Higgins Lake, on the banks of the lake. They had an acre of ground with something like 3 or 4 apple trees that we enjoyed the apples. So she attended school that year here. Then after, for whatever reasons, I guess she came a few summers. I don't know. They did come some summers until she married, and then and anyway, I was born in Detroit. So, let me see. I came up, and then Mother and Dad moved up here then when I was 5 years old, approximately. And I went to school in the same school building, same room she went in. She attended. There were something like, I think there were 15 of us maximum. Some years maybe 12 in the school. And there were 4 of us in my grade. It was Elvira Gaudet and Clara Leader, Joseph Yorty, and myself in our grade. Francis Weenus taught. I lived probably a half mile, maybe 3/4 of a mile from the school, and we went and came to school through a footpath through the woods and forest. Of course, by going every day, we kept the path open pretty well. And sometimes the snow would get pretty deep, but
Yeah.
We were fortunate. We had overshoes with buckles. I think there were 4 or 6 buckles, I don't know, metal buckles that clamped across the top, and brown lisle stockings and long underwear. And we kept warm. We played every recess. I don't know that a storm ever kept us in. 15 minutes in the morning and 15 in the afternoon, an hour at noon.
In the wintertime, you were out a whole hour at noon?
Oh, sure. What difference?
What was the thermometer reading some of those days?
Well, probably the same as it is now.
Which
We
is?
get 30 below, 20 below, or something. I don't know. I don't know. It gets cold up here in the winter. So, but we would, I can't remember staying in. I don't think the teacher'd want us in. We probably didn't stay out the full hour. In the winter, Frances Wenas would, she'd send for a case of soup from Sears Roebuck. Mother and Dad would order their groceries, their staples from Sears had a grocery catalog. And the staples, flour, sugar, and peanut butter, and mayonnaise, and I don't know what else. Lard, I suppose, or shortening of whatever kind, would all be ordered in the fall, or I can't imagine in the winter it'd be too hard to struggle with it, because the automobiles were, Mother and Dad had a Ford, open Ford car, until we were quite well grown, and then they bought a closed car.
You mean it was open in the wintertime?
In the wintertime, the car from December till caucus in March, 1st of March. The cars were put away. There was we didn't get into Roscommon those several months. We didn't get anywhere unless we walked those months.
Oh, but there was no grocery store within walking distance? Or?
Yes, the corner grocery that's over, it's Carrick's grocery now. It was Danette's at that time. In fact, originally Danette's was over on Flint Road, but then they moved to the intersection where they are now. And we would occasionally need to walk there, I suppose, maybe for eggs or something, I don't know. But there was always macaroni and spaghetti and potatoes and the starches, you know. And Mother baked bread, and we bought a quart of milk a day from Hyslop's, the farm that was between us and the schoolhouse. In fact, Hyslop's had given the acre. It was part of their orchard, obviously, because some of the apple trees were in it yet, of ground for the school. It was on the banks of the lake, quite high banks over there, and I know we used to play out on the lake when the ice formed.
Was it like Lion Manor, would it be?
No, it's not in Lion Manor, it's down in Garish.
Garish. At which part of the lake is that now?
Well, it's Sunrise Heights is the schoolhouse is still there. It's a cottage, and it's Sunrise Heights. It's down near Barry's Boatyard. If you know where that is.
Is that near Mary anywhere? Mary Lockwood?
Oh, it's this way from Mary's.
It's near the point that goes out?
No.
No?
I could show you on the map. It's. I can't give you a landmark except Sunrise Heights, which is a subdivision like Evergreen Park. And
so you used to go out when it started to get the first ice, you were saying?
Yeah, we'd go out on that ice. So if we had a sled, one would lay down and the other would straddle them and hold her coat out, and the wind would sail us along.
Oh, neat.
And the ice was a little bit rubbery. We shouldn't have been out there.
Did you ever sink?
No, we didn't do that too often, but I can remember doing it. But we played, before the snow came, we played softball. I can't remember what we played. We played hide and seek, and what else? I think that's basically it. But mostly it was softball, from the smallest one to the biggest one, because you had 8 grades, and if I think we waited probably till maybe 3rd grade or 4th grade before we could play softball. But I played it, and the teacher let us out, and we couldn't yell before we got out the door, but as soon as we got out the door, we'd say, first batter, second batter. And of course I was when I was 6, I just started school there. Fuller, man by the name of Fuller, it was from Traverse City, I believe. he he had a habit of falling asleep while the kids were supposed to be studying. You know, like when he get to sleep, why the kids would get up and go outside and play ball. But this particular time I was 6, and I'd run out and stood where the umpire stands. In baseball, if you know baseball, that's not a place to be. And this Melvin Batten, he's 6 foot tall. He was 16 years old, just a big boy. And he struck a home run. And he threw the bat back at him. You know, they throw the bat and run. It caught me in the head.
Oh.
Knocked me out. I came to, my head was over a wash basin. It was full of water, but you know what a little blood will do? Water. So I was out of school for a while with that wrapped up. But I don't know. We never had a doctor. That's why I probably don't take medication today. We grew up without.
Did your mother have a book on how to take care of before the doctor comes, or?
No. We just stayed well, I guess.
Do you have mumps, measles,
I had
chickenpox?
them all. I had them all. I had measles when I was very little before I came up here. And in fact, I had them twice. I had both kinds probably. And I had the mumps. That was before I came up here. Then we had the whooping cough. I don't really remember. I remember the others having it. And then I brought the chickenpox. We went to the city one winter, to Detroit, where Dad worked. There wasn't much work up here, you know. And for the winter. And girlfriend had just, little girl in class, I was 5th grade, I think, had just been allowed back in school after having the chicken pox, and she had some candy and she gave some to me, and I came home and I had the chicken pox and I gave it to the whole school. Oh,
How many years did your father have to be in Detroit in the wintertime?
Well, it wasn't a common thing for other people in the area to do, but occasionally, some winters they'd go down. I don't know how many. I don't know. I was 5th grade by then, so we must have been up here 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember before that. So, of course, we had an outhouse on the hill. We never closed the door, and you could look out over the lake. We did the usual thing. We had our baths once a week and clean underwear. And poor mother washed on a board and hung that stuff outside. You know, after having your hands in water for washing and then taking it. And I always think, why didn't Dad go out and hang those things up? Because she didn't ask him to, I suppose. But anyway, there was wood to carry in. We were all girls. I was the oldest, so we had to pump water and feed the chickens. We always seemed to always have a few chickens. In the wintertime, we did have one sled between us. We were lucky. We had one sled. We didn't get toys at Christmas time. There wasn't any money. I remember Dad cutting candle holders out of tin cans, you know, I suppose, whatever can, soup cans or whatever, and making candle holders and putting candles on the tree, but of course and they were thick candles like your thumb. It was so beautiful, but we could only have it just while we were all watching it because of fire, you know. So, but the sled in the wintertime was lots of fun, especially the year that Ruth Sackrider, who was an aunt to Margaret and at the Historical Society. She was
Kate?
Kate, yeah, and Margaret. I think she was a sister to their father, I think. and she would be an aunt, came and taught school. And I remember, seems to me that winter particularly, we were on a hill where we lived across the lake. And there were several angles from the hill that you could slide down. And it must have been cold because the snow sparkled like diamonds. And the only time it will sparkle is when it's clear, and the moon was so bright, it was almost like daylight. It was so bright, and the air must have been very clear. And you ask about temperature, probably something below zero. It must have been below zero, but we slid downhill, and it was just beautiful out. It was a beautiful time. So, and then we were a little older, and I learned to swim by stepping in a hole. You know, you walk along. Most of the Higgins Lake is even, but somehow there was, on that side there's rock, and we were out, and I remember walking with, who was I walking with? Some girl, probably 17, 18 years old, which means she was grown, and I was short. I was maybe 10, I don't know, 9 years old, and which means she could walk at that depth, and I couldn't if I stepped. And then there was it dropped a little bit, and I suddenly was deeper than I ought to be, and I thrashed and discovered I could keep myself afloat. So from there on, I guess that's how most of us did it. So, and I remember going to the island in a rowboat with a motor on the back, which was kind of a long run, when the island was wild, and still the pit from the hermit, what was his, I've forgotten his name, what was his name?
I don't remember.
Doesn't matter. His home was still there. Mother had seen him, you know, when she was first here, and then by the time I came along, he was gone.
Would you go swimming over at the island?
Oh, sure, you do it in a swimsuit, because when school was out, we had 9 months school, and now it's 10, right?
I guess so.
10, and which means June. Well, we were out the 1st of May, the 5th of May or something like that, and we couldn't go swimming until the 15th of June. It didn't matter if it was warm June or a cold June. We could go swimming the 15th of June. So, swimming we did. From then on, we didn't put any clothes on, and we put a swimsuit on in the morning, took it off at night when we went to bed. We were barefooted, never put shoes on all summer. Yeah.
What did you do when it rained?
Well, a bathing suit isn't any problem when it rains.
Did you have a dock?
No, no dock.
Could you go in the water anywhere in those days? You didn't have to go to road end or anything.
Oh no, you just went, but we had the end of our street that ran to the trail that ran to the lake, and go down the bank, because it was kind of a high bank there, and go into the water. But we had a footpath and a trail that led us where you went by trails. There wasn't any graded roads when I was real small. There were just trails.
Where was the nearest road that you could drive on?
Oh, we could. Dad drove, but you drove on a trail.
Oh,
on a dirt trail. Wagon trail, I suppose, originally, and then the trails meandered. So,
tell me about that legend that you heard about the Indians.
well, Mother always used to say, and I'd heard, that the Indians didn't come to Higgins Lake. That, oh, I don't know. This sounds far-fetched, but that. She said that a canoe had gone down in, I don't know, Lake Michigan or one of the lakes, whatever lake. Maybe it was Lake Superior, I don't know, and come up in Higgins Lake. Or it had gone down in Higgins Lake and come up in one of the other lakes. So it was, what would I say, ghostly, as far as they were concerned. So, but I heard that all the time I was growing up. Now, I never heard it from, after I was married and I was with a different group of people. But that's what she said. I know that in her, when she was young, before I came into the picture and can remember, that they had such terrific forest fires, and enough that they would have to put sand on the roof of the house, and they'd have to go down and get in Higgins Lake to survive, to get away from the fire. And I also know that they used to bake a lot of blueberries, and Sunday night supper, I suppose, would be blueberries and homemade bread, or all their bread was homemade at that time. Bread and butter and blueberries.
Did they have virgin timber when you came up?
No, but I remember talking to John Hyslop when he was old. I'd been married, I don't know, I'd been married, that must have been in the 40s, late 40s when I talked to him this particular time. And he was in Cottage Grove on whatever errand, and looking up at the virgin timber that's in Cottage Grove, and said, he said, when I first came here, all the area was like this. So that's one generation. How he came up, I don't know, but he probably came with the lumbering. We used to walk to church, Markey Church, from where we lived. I don't know, was that 3 miles or was it 6 miles? I really don't know how far it was. We didn't go too often, but if there was a group going, then we'd go to the church over there. But it was just, we didn't get to go to church that much. It was just too difficult to do.
How far away was the nearest doctor that you could have?
Roscommon was one doctor. Dr. Cornelia. Grayling was 2 doctors, Dr. Keebart and Clifford. Houghton Lake didn't have a doctor that I know of. West Branch would be probably the next one doctor, probably. Yeah. But people didn't go to doctors very much. They had home remedies. You rub Vicks on if you had a cold. But we weren't mixing with outside people, and I don't suppose there were that many colds. Where many of our viruses today come because we give them to each other. But up there, you could, in those years, I guess, suppose we'd get cold and wet. We'd come in and dry out. We didn't have heat all night in the coldest weather.
You didn't have heat all night?
Oh, heavens no. We had a hard time getting enough wood to keep warm in the daytime. There'd be snow on our bed in the morning when we'd wake up. Upstairs. Oh, sure. It didn't melt.
Did you have nightcaps and all that kind of thing?
Oh, no.
No?
But I sleep now with a sheet over my head. I probably slept with a blanket over my head at that time. I don't remember that.
Amazing.
Oh, dear. Yeah, well, the upstairs wasn't finished, and they didn't have 2 or 3 layers of material on a building. They didn't know what insulation was. And they had, of course, just the base burner in the living room and a kitchen range in the kitchen. The kitchen was probably the main part of the house where you could keep warm. And we dressed behind Mother and Dad, whoever, I don't know which one built the fire, in the morning. And we'd get behind it, the stove, because the heat takes a long time for room to heat, but you could stand between the wall and the heater stove, and it'd be warm enough to dress. And we, of course, rushed downstairs with our clothes and dress, and we weren't any different, I don't think, than anyone else. I don't think anyone had fires all night, unless they could bank them and had access to a lot of wood, but we really didn't. In the summer, we would, when the weather was good, we'd go out with a basket and gather pine knots for the kitchen stove, and pitch pine knots from the forest fires that had been, and I think are they from white pine? Pine knots, I don't think they're red pine, I think they're white pine, but I'm not sure. They're pine knots, though. And they're full of pitch, of course, and very hot, and you put a couple of those in the cook stove, and you'd have a roaring fire.
It would last quite a while then.
Well, that would be for cooking, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose, other wood, I suppose, be put in with it. I don't remember that. I just remember going with a little basket and finding the knots in the woods.
I've just been reading about the Hoosier schoolmaster, and it talks about the schools being so difficult for the teachers because the older boys were very obstreperous, and
No.
that's true.
The only thing I can remember is that one of the older boys would clown him, and I can't think what he did, make the rest of us giggle or something. But no, there was order in the room. There wasn't. Fuller, Mr. Fuller was a teacher when I was hit with a baseball at 6, and I think Ruth Sackrider, I don't know whether he taught the next year or whether Ruth Sackrider taught. I think he only taught that 1 year. And he had been teaching prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who taught when Mother went to school. But anyway, Ruth Sackrider, it was her first year. I think she must have been probably not more than 19 or so. And that year Dad had a horse and a buggy. Sleigh, not a sleigh. And she's from Roscommon, and weekends he would hitch the horse up, and she'd drive across the corner of the lake, and go into Roscommon for the weekend. And I know that one of the Sackriders had a livery, and possibly maybe it was her uncle or her dad, so she put her horse in, you see, in the livery stable over the weekend and come back out. And she would bring Eskimo pies. They were, I still see them. They're chocolate-covered ice cream bars, 1 apiece. Oh my goodness, those were good. That was the only time we had ice cream ever. So, and she came back.
Do you remember any spelling bees? Did they have a lot of
yes,
those?
we had spelling bees. Should have had more of them. I'd spell better. No, it's the parts of speech that I didn't really get enough of that I find I have problems with. But then we'd have a picnic at the end of school each year. I have pictures of the Hyslop school, a group of us. At least I had. I think I gave them all away. I don't know whether I have one left or not. What else can I tell you? Alda Bertle attended school. She was 16 when I was starting, so she's 10 years older than I am, probably about. But she's feeling pretty good. And she'd be a good one to talk to because she's from the same area. Yes. And Ray Kinkilla is still here. He was born the year either Ruth Sackrider or Francis Wienes taught. Either I was 6 or 7, so I'm that much older than he is. And then Francis Wienes, who'd been teaching the Richardson School and schools all her life. That was toward the last of her teaching career. She was older by then. But she boarded with us for, well, uh, probably 7 winters, 6 winters then probably, all through the grades. So I took the 8th grade in Chicago, and Fuller was here when I was 6, so.
Were there any forest fires when you were here?
There were forest fires, but not close, that bothered us.
Okay. Were there any forest fires up here that you...
Not close. There was always fires, and as far as I know, those who liked to pick berries weren't above starting a little fire, so they'd have good blueberry patch. So, in those years.
How close was your nearest neighbor?
Probably. Well, my mother's sister lived in the next 5 acres. We had 5 acres, and the Ordys had 5 acres, and 2 sisters, and then, but they had boys.
Nice.
With whom I fought, like brothers, cousins, same thing. We used to build a playhouse or something of sticks and branches and boughs and whatever, make sandcastles, whatever. And when I'd go into dinner or something, tear it up. So, well, that's a boy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we didn't have toys. We had whatever boards or whatever we could find. I remember one time I stepped on, Mother and Dad were trying to build a house, trying to make it better all the time as they could. And so there would be lumber and pieces of material around. And we were always barefooted. I stepped on this board with a nail sticking up, and it went through from the bottom of my foot to the top. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, there's no way it's got to come out. So I sat down and pulled it out. And
no doctor.
no doubt. Oh, no, heavens. I don't know what. Maybe she poured a little whiskey on it. I don't know. Alcohol. Shaving alcohol or something on it. If without a doctor, if we had a cold, she'd make a hot toddy. That was one of the remedies. It was Prohibition time, and people, liquor was illegal, of course, but they had a quart of, or a bottle, I don't know how big it was, bottle of whiskey on hand through the winter. It was never drank, but it was used for hot toddies and whatever. And to this day, I don't like the smell of it. She'd make me drink it. It was hot water with that, and I think some sugar in it, and and a bottle of Vicks. And that was about I don't even remember aspirin tablets. So it was a survival of the fittest, probably.
Is there a lot of crime around here?
Mother and Dad didn't have a key to the door. They'd go to the city for the winter and didn't lock the door. They closed it, but didn't lock it. And we never paid too much attention about locking the door, even in the 40s here.
What about when you got to Detroit? You locked the door there?
I don't remember that. No, I don't remember that. I remember going to school there, but the 5th grade, but walking. I don't know. I think I walked 14 blocks. I don't know. I walked a long, long ways to school there. So, but I remember walking to back up here from where we lived, across the corner of the lake, and then up to Carrick's store for whatever Mother had to have that was special. I didn't do it often, but I did it once in a while. And then I was going to say, my cousins who were boys lived next to us, but the girl that I chummed with, you always have a little girlfriend. lived a mile back from the lake. And we sometimes would stay all night, she with me or I with her. And Mother and Dad, that would be their recreation. They would go over and spend the evening with their friends a mile away, and then have to walk a mile back at night.
In the winter?
Well, I don't remember winter, but we must have done it in the winter, because that's when most of the time they would get together and the car was put up, and we only had the horse the 1 year. Sometimes there was a while when they had dances all night. You'd go before it got too dark and then come back in the morning and walk 3 or 4 miles to in the neighborhood.
You mean you danced all night?
They danced all at midnight. They would have like chicken a la king or some hot dinner, or supper. I guess it's called a supper, isn't it, at night? And then square dance. Somebody'd call. Whatever, I don't even remember the music, except in the town halls, these township halls, families would go. And I know at Lyon there was Evelyn Fraser's mother played, Heiderman, Mrs. Heiderman. And it was just just the same thing over and over and over and over. But it was something they could square dance to. It was a beat. And I guess that it seems to me there was a time when they had a fiddle too, but I can't remember for sure. Evelyn is older and she may remember more than I do.
Did they have a piano in these?
Yes, well, that's what she'd play.
Yeah,
But a chord. She just played the same
This
chord.
is the
over.
township halls.
Township hall, with benches along the walls. And then at midnight or whenever, late in the evening, they'd have coffee and cake. Coffee and cake was always the refreshment. When Mother and Dad would go visit their friends, the Leaders, and walk the mile, then Mrs. Leader would have cake and coffee at a late hour before going home. And there was never alcohol of any kind. So...
Were there pianos in the schools?
No, we didn't have a piano.
Did you have singing then?
We tried to at Christmas time. I remember we sang Jingle Bells and we were off key. And Heather Nielsen who sang. Aunt Lydia was her grandmother. Okay. And she had had a high soprano voice and sang very well, but not trained. Heather's is trained. And she would try to get us to sing. We'd have a little Christmas program for the, the class. And our gift 1 year, I know, was chocolate Santa Clauses. And I remember being in the car. And that was an open touring car. I suppose they had side curtains on, though, didn't they? I think they had side curtains for them. And they went over to Love's, and Minnie Love had somehow had access to buying these chocolate Santa Clauses. And oh, they were so impressive. We had a Christmas tree in the school, as I remember we did. One thing that we had the apple trees in the yard, so that all in the fall we'd just grab an apple and eat it as we ran, and playing softball. And then as frost came on, we would gather the apples and wrap them in newspaper of some kind, whether it was newspaper, I don't know, and put them in a box. And then the teacher would dole them out to us so they would last, through the fall. And then for a while, I don't know how many years, that she had some sort of a oil burner, something where she could heat soup. And I know that she herself would send for a case of Campbell's soup, various kinds. And And then our mothers, but there weren't that many mothers that could, so that it could rotate. When it was your turn, you sent some bean soup or whatever you wanted to send. And I remember Elda Bertel's mother, Mrs. Gaudet, she was Belgium, and she sent a soup that had been sieved. It was good. It was a different kind of soup that was quite heavy. But see, that would be very good, something warm for us at noon besides the lunches that we carried.
How old were you when you had your first date?
Oh, gosh. We didn't have dates. There wasn't anybody to date.
Oh,
You
when did you
just
go?
played with each other. Went down at the lake, and I don't know.
Well, when did you go to your first dance then?
Well, the dances I went to, and even when I met Clayton, were at the Township Hall. That's where they were.
Did you go with him or by yourself
no,
first?
went with Mother and Dad, and he was there. So, and of course I was young there, so.
Were there any motion pictures around anywhere?
Once in a while, we had, the Yardies had a touring car, and Mother and Dad had a touring car. And other people, Hyslop still had a horse and wagon, horses, and Keen's, where Lockreys are, that was Keen's. They had horses, cattle. We bought our milk from them, from Hyslop's. Okay, what was I going to tell? Oh, one time, Mother and Dad and Yardies, they did things together, the two couples, quite often, or much of the time. And I think there was 13 of us altogether. How come there was 13? There was 4 of Aunt Liddy, 5 of us. Maybe there was 12 of us, or close to it. They put us all in one car and went to movies. But to do it, I remember everybody robbed everybody's bank, to get the pennies. And I don't know. I don't suppose a movie then would be a quarter. I don't know what movies would be. And it seemed to me we saw, what was that earth-shaking movie? The Story of Christ? What was it?
Oh,
no,
right. 10 Commandments?
10 Commandments or something like that, yes. It must have been great to move them, to go. See, you had to go from the south end of Higgins Lake through trails to Grayling.
Oh, my.
And we never went to Grayling except on a rare occasion in the early years. Never in the very early years. And then, well, I must have been 9 years old or 10 when we did that. That was a big event. And they all laughed. There was something about when we started piling out of the car. People on the sidewalk, they always teased about being the dirty dozen. That's where I was trying to think where, because I remember Mother and Aunt Liddy and Dad, all their days they laughed about going to Grayling and getting out of the car. Probably Uncle Ed drove, because he was quite a hand to do things for people, do something nice or get something going that was, that was a little different, kind of imaginative. So.
And I should ask you what your name was, because I didn't.
Harriet Brower.
Brower? Brower?
Harriet Brower.
And what
Mother
part
and
of...
Dad were Beatrice and Bill Brower. Dad was a township road commissioner at one time for Garish.
Where did your ancestors come from in Europe?
Well, Mother's family, the Fesnans, came from it came from England, but they must have been down near Canterbury Cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
Canterbury? Yeah,
Mhm.
Canterbury, south of London.
Mm-hmm.
They must have been, because they, why do I know that?
When you were over there, I guess
No.
you found some things.
Well,
in it.
no, I knew it first. I can't think right now.
Hmm.
They're from that area. And Dad's, let me see. Mother's people came from Canada. I have grandfather's, William Morrison's, gold, silver, it's the size of a silver dollar or larger, medal for being in the Fenian raid that took place in New York, I think, from Canada. Isn't that right? Do you know?
I don't know.
And I didn't get it out this year. I had forgotten about it. I should go see where it is. Anyway, they were from, what's the capital of Canada? Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Quebec. No, not Toronto. No.
Ottawa?
Quebec. Ottawa. He worked in the capital in Ottawa, and then they came to Chicago and Aurora. That is grandmother's side. Grandfather's side, the Fessendens, came from Portland, Maine. And great-grandmother was a widow and had a little boy and little girl. And I have an idea she was a determined woman, because apparently Mother and Dad and Yordies went east, in the 60s, early 60s, to Portland, Maine, to look up where, the church and so forth, and found a lot of the Fessenden home is next door to Longfellow's home. They were contemporaries. And in that day and age, I guess, when a woman was alone, you had to annex a man, whether he was an uncle or a brother or whatever, to you. And I think she was an independent spirit, and she must have come in the 50s to Aurora, Illinois, because when Yordies and my folks went out there in the 60s, they met a very old man that, the Fessenden, that they looked up, and he remembered Lucy Fessenden going west. Well, Chicago was west at that time, but the Erie Canal, and then crossing Lake Erie, and then by horse and buggy, and what determination to take 2 children and go off into the hinterlands alone. So, and that's what the pioneers were made of. I don't know.
Almost.